it has felt like a procession to Celtic and a proper opportunity to go and do them in this game.
5 days left in the window, needing 4 or 5 first-team players to come in, hit the ground running, and be good for you. It's not sustainable.
How much is it? 8 million? Okay, write the check. An absolutely huge week for Celtic. Some big news breaking today. Some big news going to break during the week. Signings in, signings out. Champions League draw, Rangers game, all coming up this week, and we've got a lot to talk about. Melly, Stephen, it's going to be a big episode.
Big one. Looking forward to this. It's all culminating in this, isn't it?
It's always if it's part of a master plan, Stephen, or just by accident.
Yeah, we have been urging Celtic to get some stuff done for weeks and weeks now. It's all happening now. Some sad times as well, because Matt O'Reilly has finally left us. As we sat here last week, that was when the formal bid arrived, and now he's sadly no longer with us. He's still alive, but he has, to all intents and purposes, he's dead to me. He's gone to Brighton.
Are you on the Rat O'Reilly bus already?
Yeah.
Jesus, man, you're heartless.
Yeah, look, I'm just giving the club solid, blunt feedback, like some employees have been receiving this week as well.
You can't beat that sort of direct feedback. If you want to know how your customers are feeling, bump into them outside. It's not Love Street anymore, or whatever it's called, the Sims ground.
Yeah.
And they'll happily tell you. Are you one of our customers listening and watching this? If not, you can be patreon.com/20minutetims, and we will happily take your direct feedback on the podcast there. It's a huge week for Celtic. That means it's a huge week for us. Patreon.com/20minutetims. We will be scouting all of Celtic's players as they come in. We will be reacting to the closing of the transfer window. We'll be reacting to the Champions League draw. We will be bringing you special content in the build-up to the Rangers game. You can get all that and much more in terms of videos, podcasts and writing at patreon.com/20minutetims. And it is season ticket renewal time, so you can sign up for a whole year of content at a discount, get it paid and upfront and out the way, and enjoy a full season of 20 Minute Tim's content. Martin Melly, we scouted Matt O'Reilly January 22, and I'm paraphrasing now, but the scout at the time we had on said he will stay at Celtic for the remainder of this season and one season more. Then he will move on to be Celtic's and Scotland's highest ever transfer sale. Of that, I have no doubt. We clipped it, we put it up on 20 Minute Tim's Twitter, or X as it is now. Absolutely terrible platform. we some really good stuff on there, Stephen's fond of saying. And it was quite prescient, and it's become absolutely true as we record this today. Matt O'Reilly's moved on. I nearly said passed on there. Matt O'Reilly's moved on. £30 million. And it's a weird one, because normally you would be every day would, if when a transfer record gets broken by a club or in a national league, everyone talks about it, but no one, well, Celtic fans we've seen on social media or us, we're not going, yes, £30 million. We're like, Christ, we lost Matt O'Reilly. No one really cares so much in this instance about the fee, probably because we know, it's going to have to pry it out of Dermot Desmond's cold, dead hands to get any of it. But also it's just because of how great a player and how great a guy Matt O'Reilly was. Like, we're all pretty gutted that he's gone, because he's a fantastic footballer.
Yeah, it's kind of the same as Jota last season, wasn't it? You get to the point where you go, look, 25 million, this time 30 million. So we don't do anything with it. So I would rather have the player. But in Matt O'Reilly's case, you can't begrudge him it. He's been absolutely brilliant for Celtic. I remember when our scout at the time said that, so I went looking for it at the weekend, and he was just talking about how good a player he was, and we seen that come to fruition, didn't we? The guy just seemed to get better and better after that sort of first 6 months. Last season was utterly brilliant, and I keep saying it, one of the best performances from a central midfielder I've ever seen at Celtic. He was just brilliant, came in, embraced the place, played brilliantly, scooped trophy after trophy, completed it, mate, didn't he? And now he's off down to a very decent team by the looks of it. You can go on about Brighton, how they're not a storied club and all that, but they're currently joint top of the Premier League after a couple of games, aren't they?
Well,
and take it, but it's going to the top of the Premier League, and it's going to a team that's kind of the complete opposite of Celtic right now, because you're looking at Brighton and going, well, there's a team that are out spending money on positions they need. They've got a transfer strategy. They seem to take one manager out, put in another one, and it all seems to be running well. take note, Celtic, please.
Well, listen, I've got some juicy transfer rumours for later on in the
Oh,
podcast.
good, so.
So
yeah,
we don't know
go.
some real
Breaking.
real hot scoops.
Yeah.
The Brits sail over
I know,
here.
I know. It's no. It's the thing about Matt O'Reilly and Brighton, Stephen, is Brighton is like EPLU, isn't it? It's the English Premier League University, and we sort of touched on it last week about how he could have probably moved on a level and done a bit better. But I'm quite interested to see how Matt's career pans out. Now, I say this a lot. You know how, like, when you go on holiday and you make friends and they're from, like, all different places, you say, oh, we'll definitely stay in touch. And then, like, come October, you're not talking anymore. Remember that from when you were a wee guy?
Yeah.
Like, I quite frequently say that about players that leave Celtic.
How long did you keep Joe Hart on your Instagram after he retired?
Well, it's funny you should mention this because I'm pretty ruthless. If I follow a player on Instagram, a Celtic player, right, the minute he stops being a Celtic player, I unfollow him. Why would you follow your ex on Instagram
It's
and
the
see
only way
the
to get
great
back
life
at
they're
them.
having
Yeah.
with their new partner? No, you immediately cut them off. So
It's the only power you have, isn't it? It's the only way to get back at them. Yeah.
with the best of intentions, I intend to follow Matt O'Reilly's career. I intend to do the same thing with Jota, but you don't get much Saudi football on the telly.
No,
You have to go
no.
looking for it. But I am very, very interested, at least today, in how Matt O'Reilly's career is going to pan out because I do think he can reach that other upper level from Brighton.
Yeah, it is almost as early as it's possible to get in a league season now that they're 2 games in Brighton, but they are joint top
Can't
of the
take
league.
that away from
No,
them. Melly,
you cannot take that away from them.
Melly quite said he's moved to the top of the Premier
Yeah,
League. Yeah.
yes, but it's quite interesting to note that kind of contrast there because if we've been linked to Man United, people will be, wow, what a massive club he's going to, but they're garbage, and Brighton beat them basically every time they play them. So you're, in many ways, you're probably better off at Brighton. But it's one of those transfers that is basically, as sad as it is, and we'd all come to terms with it weeks ago, for honest. It's just been a kind of slow, gradual process towards this. But it's one of those transfers that's basically worked out for everyone involved. Everything has been done the right way. The club have got a good fee for it. He never... He was pretty unwavering in his professionalism. He never once asked for a move, and everything that was coming out from various sources behind the scenes and all that was basically an agreement that he's not pushing for a move. Obviously, he's open, he's exploring his options and all that, but he's not going to make any trouble for anyone. He's quite happy to stay. So very happy to stay at Celtic. In fact, it just an offer came along that suited him. So everyone has done their job fairly well here. It's just that we as fans are left in the position where, once again, we've sold another major player, and as yet, nothing has really been done towards the... I'm careful about using the word replacement, right? Because I don't know if we necessarily always get that. We don't always get direct like-for-like replacements when we lose major players. But what we do is we need players in, even for the sake of depth, because it can't be Bernardo and Hatate all season in front of Callum McGregor. We need more than that. So we're left in this kind of limbo now, just between flagship recording and the end, the slamming shut of the transfer window, where we're in that kind of, right, what's going to happen now? We've all come to terms, yes, with Matt O'Reilly. Great bit of business if you're into that kind of thing, but we kind of need to be seeing some action on the inwards.
Brendan spoke about it, obviously, after the game against St Mirren. There was a lot of sort of transfer chat. You can feel the temperature and the pressure just building a wee bit under Celtic and under the transfers. I don't think it was helped, Melly, in small part by the links to Man City for Kyogo during the week. Now, it's worth touching on them because they bubbled up and then very, very quickly they went away, and it looks like Man City are perhaps doing no more business. But things like that, it's a reminder, isn't it, that between now and the end of the window, if you're not prepared, you never know who's going to come knocking, because Man City, apparently, they don't want to spend some money. Who was the boy they sold, Stephen? You were touching on it previously.
Julian Alvarez?
Yeah.
So they've got a bit of a gap in there, but they don't want to go out and spend masses of money. There's the City connection. There's Man City's assistant manager who previously managed Kyogo. All these wee things are sort of ticking about, and you need to think, if an 11th hour bid comes in for him and he wants to go, Celtic need to be prepared for it. But the reality is, Melly, we simply can't afford to sell Kyogo. It doesn't matter if it's Man City. It doesn't matter if it's an 11th hour bid. It doesn't matter if he wants to go. We have to say, look, we'll revisit this in January. Celtic simply can't afford to lose this guy in the dying days of the window.
No, they can't, and this is the position we've got ourselves in, isn't it? Because if you're looking at it from a sort of player trading model, or if you're looking at it from a Celtic standpoint, and you go, forget everything else, an offer comes in for a near 29-year-old striker who has a bit of a dodgy shoulder from one of the biggest clubs in the world, and they are offering a staggering amount that you will never get again after this window for this guy, then Celtic should be in the position that they go, do you know what? We've done our homework everywhere else. Everything else is ready. We've got a list of players we can go out and get. But that's the least of Celtic's worries, because we've still got about 4 positions we need to address, and Matt O'Reilly's replacement before we even get to Kyogo. So we've got ourselves in a position where we simply can't entertain it. Whether it came
Let
to
me play
that,
devil's advocate a wee bit though, because is there any club in the world, bar your Man City, your Real Madrid, who their star asset, say any other club, the star asset gets an offer in from in the last day of the window, the last days of the window. The best one in the world, no club has got a Rolodex of top talent, because the level of player we'd have to bring in to replace Kyogo, it doesn't matter really if it happened at the beginning of the window, the end. I don't think we'd ever replace him. But this last week, I think the expectation that Celtic should be able to cope with this in the last days because they've got backups ready to go. I just think it's the gap's too great. The talent level will go out in the short time window. I just don't think any club could cope with that.
no, but the problem for Celtic is like you said, we can't entertain it because of the state of the rest of the squad. Whereas if we had, like any other big club, got in a left back, centre half, a winger, then you could maybe go, do you know what? If Kyogo goes for 20, 25 million, we've got Ida, Dyson, we've just brought in this new winger, we've got 3 or 4 wingers, Dyson can play up top, back up to Ida, we can get through to January.
Maybe absorb it until January, right?
Yeah,
Get you.
and maybe get through it. But with the position Celtic have got themselves in, where they've just brought in a striker recently, and now we've got all this other stuff to do, you're looking at going, can't do it. We could, like you were talking about in the Friday phone-in, we've said it all along, I say it all the time, we're chipping away at this. If Kyogo was to go, we're looking at another guy who was one of our best players leaving, and what are we replacing him with? Nothing. So we need to go and address the other things before we can even think about Kyogo. And looking around the transfer window, looking around Europe, not even Chelsea are in the last 5 days of the window looking about for 4 or 5 players. What are we doing here? Brendan said it. It's not right how we're getting to this point, and we need not just players to come in for depth, like Stephen said, we need guys to come in and start games for us straight away. So we can't entertain anything for any other players, and we need to go out and get players that are going to make a difference.
You and I recorded the Friday phone-in, Stephen, on Friday. If you want to know what that is, it's a bi-weekly, fortnightly podcast where we answer questions. It's on patreon.com/20minute-tims. 20-minute tims. We were pretty angry when that kicked off about, the state of it. Since then, and the rumours that I've heard and the players that we linked to, I'm a lot calmer now. I don't know if we'll do all the business, but what I've heard from and what I've seen rumours-wise, I think we're going to do a fair bit of business the last couple of days. Certainly Brendan Rodgers is
couple of words from Peter and he's calming down already. Look at that.
In the pocket of Big Lawwell again.
Scared of Peter. He's
calm down, we know what we're doing. He said.
No, he's like, it's not really that. It was more Brendan's demeanour. Brendan seemed quite calm about it. After the game, Brendan was like, look, I am confident come Friday the squad will be stronger than it was last season. I'm confident that'll be the case.
He's been yucking it right up in these press conferences,
I know.
isn't he? Pretending Mick Nick's on the phone and saying, oh, shut him up, shut him up. He's been having a rare old time.
So I was quite angry. I had a whole thing prepared today, this week about how, and I might still wheel it out next week. You can reuse material, but if Celtic don't improve, then as we touched on the Friday phone, it's just no, and Brendan touched on it, it's no right. You cannot keep selling our best players and no replacing them and expect us to turn up week in, week out. And crucially, you can't. How do you build anything if you're constantly chipping away at the foundations of it? How does Celtic? So Celtic right now don't compete in the Champions League, but the wish is they want to compete in the Champions League, right? So that's an improvement we need to make, right? But we keep selling good players and replacing them with worse players, but expecting to improve.
I've identified a flaw there.
Yeah.
Right.
So my question to the guys running Celtic would be, how do you move up when all you're doing is fighting and spending fortunes and staying tooth and nail just to keep on an even keel?
Yeah.
So that's the real test over the next couple of days. Do you replace O'Reilly? Apparently we're in for Engels. That looks as if it might happen. Highly thought of. Everyone in the Discord is absolutely loving the sound of this guy. They're loving Engels instead. I can't believe I missed it. There's a Bogus, or is that how you pronounce it? From not the way I'll be pronouncing it. From LAFC, another £8 million signing. So it looks as if Celtic are in the market here for some serious signings that are going to improve the team. But it's a challenge.
Yeah, and look, what we're talking about here is not only losing our best players, it's there are players been linked away and Matt O'Reilly's already gone. If Kyogo was to go behind that, then I don't know what it says about the club. But I appreciate that to an extent we have to be accepting. Ange prepared for this a couple of seasons ago, where he said, like, don't get too attached to these heroes. You have to move on and you have to be quite active in the transfer market. But at the same time, you're losing your best players, yes, but you are losing players that people genuinely care about. You're losing the sort of heroes of the team, and once you start losing that and you only care about, right, you take that one out, move them on, make profit on this, sign another one, it all becomes a little bit cold, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm old enough to be fairly kind of relaxed about these things, fairly pragmatic about it, but there are generations of kids coming to Celtic games that absolutely love Kyogo. I've got a pal whose wee boy asked his dad to get him like a Japanese phrase book so he could start picking up Japanese words because he was obsessed with Kyogo and had that. And I can't. These are just small examples, but there's a culture to Celtic that goes beyond just making cold profit on players. And again, I'm not saying we just keep these players in perpetuity and never sell them, but Celtic need to kind of appreciate that at times as well. If you can't just go gutting us of all the players that everyone cares about and then just bringing in
There's
new
been
guys.
like a sleight of hand, hasn't there, with this player trading model? Because before, when the player trading model all kicked off, for talking sake, we would have our core team of players, and every season we would sell one or two and then replace them. And then their replacement would quite often be quite a good player. So the blow wasn't as much. But it's like someone else has arrived at Celtic and went, this is great. You just sell all these players and and then you have all this money in the bank. And there's been no real consideration for how is this pushing the team on? Like, how is this advancing Celtic as a team? How are the team getting better? And I think if we come to the end of this window and the team isn't stronger than it was last season or stronger than it was the season before, I think there really needs to be a serious... I know Brendan said that the transfer model is going to get all ripped up, which is a real blow in the jaw for all those people who said, trust the process. Brendan Rodgers is out 2 days later going, this process is absolutely cooked and it needs to go in the bin.
Trash the process, I suppose.
Trash the process. Yeah. But I think there needs to be a real discussion with the people currently running Celtic going, right, look, all these years ago, we put this system in place and it got us to here. And then we advanced it and it got us to here. But is it the case? Is this more like a relay race than a marathon? Have this current team, this current thinking, got us to a point where it is now time to pass the baton and give it to some other people who can increase us? Because I am really struggling to see how what we're doing, Melly, improves the team. How we're going to get better than we were last season or the season before.
Yeah, and that's the problem we have, isn't it? I think with Celtic, it's right, go out and sell a player. Right, that's brilliant. But for me, the player trading model looks like you bring in a player, sell them on for big money, and you use that money to improve the rest of your team. Celtic seem to be forgetting that bit, don't they? They seem to be, right, we've brought in 25 million for Jota. That is what... 12 £2 million players. It doesn't work. So I think
plus change, you get a wee bit of profit at the end of
a wee
it.
bit of cabbage in the bank. So I think what we need to do now, and Stephen mentioned it already, Ange prepared us for this. He used words like, we need to be aggressive in the transfer market. Celtic have went the complete other way since he's gone and just done something completely different, and we seem to be going backwards. The more money we bring in, the less we want to spend on players, and we're happy to... I was thinking about it today. I already mentioned Chelsea, but are we Chelsea in Scotland? We seem to be...
that Mitchell and Webb meme, are we the baddies? Are we Chelsea?
Because we seem to be bringing in these sort of players, spreading it over 5-year contracts, so it's not going to be a big blow if they don't turn out well, when really none of them have turned out that great. And we look back to the transfer window last season, I could say, like, see if we sold all of them between now and the end of the window, you wouldn't really notice any of the summer signings. So I think what Celtic have to do is go back to that model, have a look at it, and seriously change the bit about buying players, because we're selling the players, that's fine. We've sold 2 years on the bounce where we've broke the transfer record in Scotland. That's not going to happen again next year, probably, in all likelihood. So while you chip away, you then don't have the players to then sell on. So we need to bring in a new raft of players that we can sell on. So Celtic need to get better at this, going out and changing things up, because you can't be going into the end, 5 days left in the window, needing 4 or 5 first-team players to come in, hit the ground running, and be good for you. It's not sustainable, and you can't go the other way about it and bring in 8 or 9 players like we did last season and hope one or two of them work out. None of them have worked out.
I think, to be fair to Celtic, I think you can probably confidently say we have binned the ideas of last season. I think the idea that I don't think Brendan Rodgers, judging by what I've seen in the window so far and his comments, I don't think he's really going to entertain another, Odenholm coming in for £2 million or whatever it is, or Lagerbielke coming in for a couple of £1 million. I don't think he even wants to spend his money that way, and I think he's been quite precious about it. I think what we're going to see over the next couple of days anyway is we're going to see a left back coming in. We've already got Valle or Baye or however you pronounce his name from Barcelona coming in. We're going to have him scouted. You're sitting down with Alex tomorrow, Mary, to record the scouting podcast that'll be out this week. So we'll get a good idea of what he's going to bring to the table. Barcelona renews his contract. He's got a buyout clause, but it's just a straight loan. The rumour there is that we're loaning him and we're going to bring Kieran Tierney back. Now, whether or not that comes to fruition, we can have the debates and the merits of that. We're going big on a central midfielder to replace Matt O'Reilly. I think that's Engels. I think that's the guy who we fancy there. Apparently we want another winger, and apparently we're trying to bring in a centre half. There's also rumours of a striker, but I think we're only going to bring in a striker should Kyogo go.
Yeah.
And all these guys, these signings, are between the £6 and £8 million mark. That's what I've heard. So I don't think we're either going to bring in high quality loans or we're going to spend actual money on signings. That's basically what the tea leaves and the rumours and everything out, the culmination of all the vibes that I'm picking up. That's basically what I'm understanding.
What do you think? But do you think they've been backed into this situation, or do you think this was the plan all along? Because surely it can't be wait till the very end, because Celtic might well have all these guys lined up, but if some other club has to sell their best player on the last day and then they go, we need a striker, or we need a winger, or we need a left back, and go, oh, well, what about this guy? And then we get gazumped, as they like to say. So it's a very... Look, whatever happens, see if Celtic go out and buy £4-8 million players, good. This isn't the way to do it, but this is not the way to do it.
And I think there's an acceptance from Celtic. I don't have any inside info, by the way. I'm just judging all the comments that I've read from like Brendan and all that. I think there's an acceptance from Brendan, though. In fact, he's flat out said it. Like, this isn't the way a club like Celtic should operate. And I'm scratching my head. I'm like, Stephen, how did we end up in this position? Because I think if it's an effort to save money, that's not really going to work, is it? Because if you're panicked and you're backed into a corner and you're desperate for players and the window's slowly closing in the next couple of days, you're going to end up overpaying. But that's a problem of Celtic's own making. So I think the important thing is to get the players in. I think Celtic need to accept even that they're going to overpay now. That's just probably the way it's going to be.
Are they going to need to pay the going rate?
Well, they're going to have to pay the going rate, but I think if people find out you're desperate, if people find out that the window's closing and you desperately need a striker or desperately need a centre half, you're probably going to find yourself paying a wee bit more.
I think we've had to kind of readjust their perception of cheap these days, of bargains in the market, because we've stood still for essentially 20 years trying to pick up, even Martin O'Neill's team had big signings in it, 6 million odd. The kind of big signings were all about 6 million. And then you looked round about the kind of smaller, more domestic signings were all about 1.5, 2 million, like Ulrich Larsson. Almost 25 years on, we're still trying to do that. We're still trying to pick up players for 1.5 million.
To find the next David Fernandez.
Yes. So even if we do develop to the point where these squad players, or not squad players is a kind of loaded term these days, but the guys they bring in to hopefully get a bit of minutes here and there, guys that were signed last season like Lagerbielke, Yang and all that, if they're being brought in and those are the sort of cheaper signings, we're going to need to just raise that bar ever so slightly to come in line with like modern football. Cheap signings these days are going to become 3 and 4 million. That is no longer going to be, wow, that's huge money for Celtic. If we want to kind of get with the times, we want to compete in Europe, crucially, we're going to have to just start realising the reality of what's around about us.
Or become smarter. I mean, I know you said, 1.5 million. You said that figure there, and I know people listening to this and watch this will be saying, well, that's exactly how much we paid for Matt O'Reilly.
That's true.
So there are players out there at that level that you can turn around, but we just need to be a wee bit smarter with it. But I don't think Celtic need to be afraid of going out there and buying actual quality. For example, if Engels is 6.5 million or 8 million, and he comes in and he crucially pushes the team on, which is what we're wanting to do, which is the whole object behind Celtic. And as Brendan said himself, he wants to make a crack at this Champions League, especially with the new format. We need to bring the players in that are capable of doing that, but there's no risk and no loss. Well, there is a risk, but there's no loss if they come in and they do achieve what we want them to achieve. And I think we need to be a wee bit bolder and smarter and crucially a wee bit quicker. If we see a player and we think this guy's shit hot, how much
Yeah.
is he? 8 million? Okay, write the check.
Yeah, there was some talk online a couple of weeks ago now, I think, from a big account. It's one of the kind of larger Celtic social media accounts was talking about how look, the vibe is, this wasn't their opinion, this was something that was relayed from the vibe as we were talking about from the club. There's a perception out there that if we want the quality required, we're going to have to wait. And that's when I thought, yeah, but that doesn't guarantee success either, because that's what Melly's just been describing there. If you're waiting and waiting and if you've got all these players right in front of you, as you've just described, that guy's shit hot, but we're going to need to wait and see if we can get the price driven down and all that. Those guys could be picked off by anyone. We are existing in a market where we can't compete. If English teams come in and say, well, see that guy you've been pointing at and saying this guy's shit hot, we're going to come back in for him at the very end of the window. We usually have him just now. That's the reality we live in. So I don't think this is unfair now. I don't think it's hysterical from us because Brendan Rodgers is literally out there saying it. Yes, there's a bit of a wink to it. There's a bit of a sort of wry smile to when he's sort of criticising the club, but he is literally telling us now that this transfer system we've got doesn't work and we're going to have to look at it. And it's amazing to be in this position just 1 year on from when Brendan Rodgers came back to the club and all the chat was, well, if he's come back, all the transfer stuff's going to be fixed.
He said it himself. He said, I had a look and it's a lot better. Brendan Rodgers said those exact words.
That's right.
And there was a whiff of defence about it. I remember talking to someone at the time, Melly, because we were at that press conference and it was a journalist, I can't remember who, and I probably wouldn't anyway. But they were saying, oh, he's this guy said, calling somebody out. But a journalist said was making the point after the Brendan press conference about he seems a lot calmer on transfers, and I said, well, he kind of has to say that because if he arrives and immediately says, "Here's transfer stuff," it's still a shenanigan, then people wouldn't necessarily stand for it. That's
his reputation damaged as well.
And
if
that's
he walks
kryptonite
in,
to Celtic fans and Brendan Rodgers. That's a buzzword that he just can't talk about. But as Stephen says, fast forward 12 months and he's like, see this shenanigans I'm putting up with transfers, it needs to go. And he did say last season, did he not say the exact words, I had a look under the bonnet or words to that effect about the transfer system's a lot better?
I was hugely impressed. He mentioned Mark Lowell and a couple of others by name and talking about how impressive they are as operators behind the scenes.
So all that, forget it. It's on the bin.
He could have looked at it from that point and went, look, over those 2 seasons, Celtic did bring in good players, Jota, Carter Vickers, and that's sort of second season under Andrews. Where you want the squad to get back to, that was a very good squad we had there, and there was players that could come off the bench and really make a difference. But where we got to in that summer with Brendan Rodgers, first summer was terrible. I've said I'd probably let them all go now. But Brendan Rodgers right now is in a win-win situation, but that doesn't really do much for the fans, does it? He's went out there and said, look, this is broken. I expect quality to come in. I'm calm about it. So if it doesn't come in, we all know where our anger's going to go. It's not going to go to Brendan Rodgers. It's not going to go to the players, of course. It's going to go to the board. But it's no fair. Brendan Rodgers said it himself. Like, fans deserve the best players on the pitch. This isn't a way to go about it, is wait till the last minute. No big club is out there doing that. And we are wanting to be one of these big clubs, aren't we? We want to be competing in this every year. And if this is the model, I'm looking beyond this season. This time next season, we'll be in Champions League qualifiers. So we have been in the Champions League for 3 seasons in a row. We need to keep trying to progress to be that. That's what we want to be, doesn't it? We want to compete in the Champions League. So if we're going to do that next season, we're going to need to get into the Champions League, even if we win the league. So I think we need to prepare for that. And you keep looking at Celtic going, last summer, we can't do that again. We get to January. Oh, do you know what? We'll do it this time. And then we don't even bring in a left back and we sell one and all that again. Then we get to this summer and we're in the last 5 days of the window and we go, nah, we're not going to do it again. Yet here we sit here waiting for 3 or 4 bits of quality. The same thing Brendan Rodgers wanted this time last year was 3 or 4 bits of quality. Here we are a year down the line doing it all over again. And we're like, why does this keep happening?
Well, I'm prepared to give Brendan Rodgers the benefit when he said it's going to change. I think I'm prepared. You know, I'm not sitting here sort of your mindset going, I can't believe we're going through this again, and next season's going to come up. And I'm not really thinking along those lines. I'm thinking, I'm glad it's all out in the open now. I'm glad there's sunlight on it, and everyone's talking about it. And Brendan came out and openly says, "Look, we'll get the players in. Trust me, we'll get the players in." But after this window, we're going to look at it because we shouldn't be in this position. And that's exactly what I want to hear for the manager.
He said it took a lot longer than he'd have liked. As the football manager at the club, it took a lot longer than he'd have liked.
And look, just to put a button on this transfer stuff, because we've got the Rangers game coming up that we want to talk about. Left back, central midfielder,
centre back.
Centre half, non-negotiable. Absolutely 100% centre half.
Listen, I'm just this is what I'm picking up for the airwaves, right? Left back, central midfielder, centre half, winger, and maybe a striker, and in that order is how they're going to arrive at the club.
I'm not bothered.
Is that your big thing you were talking about? Your big.
That's all I've got. Yeah, that's it.
Is that astonishing rumours?
Yeah.
Just a list of positions that need filled. Yeah, right.
Yeah, come back to me next week.
Yeah, I'm not bothered about striker at all, but that's on the basis that Kyogo doesn't go. I'm not bothered about that at all. But I know people might think we've focused on that unnecessarily, maybe excessively, but why we responded to that so strongly at the time on Friday when that first kind of broke and now was that the sources on that were pretty serious. That wasn't the likes of the Daily Record and just sort of clickbait sites. That was all coming from England.
Yeah, the Athletic picked up on it, didn't they?
The Athletic, English-based, sort of club-focused journalists down there are not generally in the business of just posting something for the sake of it. I get like a push notification from the Athletic saying Kyogo strongly interest Pep and all that, and I was like, oh, well, that's got my interest, because you see stuff like that all the time. You need to basically just ignore a large proportion of what you see during silly season in the transfer windows. But when
tear my hair out.
Yeah, when certain English-based journalists and sources are posting and tweeting about Celtic players, our best players, that's when I start to kind of take notice.
And nobody really tells us anything, especially from inside the club, but you do tend to. When you see rumours track, you tend to see them picked up by certain people, and you think, he's not regularly one for posting nonsense. And then the way that rumours tend to sort of, the anatomy of a transfer, as you want to call it, if Celtic in the next couple of days start to get honestly linked from good sources to other strikers, then at that point I'll start to think,
Edward was the chat today, wasn't it?
A lot of nonsense, by the way.
Yeah.
Total nonsense. I've had that confirmed to me as we were sitting
right,
here.
Good.
But it was I think if strong people with a strong track record of getting things right start to link Celtic to strikers, at that point I'll start to worry about Kyogo. But until then I won't. But there's people out there that should be more worried about Kyogo than us. And it is that bald egg of a man, Philip Clement.
Oh, right. The other one, right.
No, not you.
The Belgian one.
You're my bald friend.
The mayonnaise guzzling Belgian egg that we're talking about,
Racism. Rangers on the horizon, and all this transfer stuff, Melly, and all this transfer stress, I've got to be honest, this game has kind of crept up on me a little bit as we push towards it, as you have Rangers scouted for Patreon, as we start to edge towards a tie, the nerves will start to kick in a wee bit, but there's two things going on at the moment. One, transfer shenanigans have got me looking elsewhere, and two, I'm a wee bit too confident.
Oh, are you? Yeah, I think it was a big week, isn't it, with the transfers, and then we've got the Champions League draw, the big boy draw, and then we'll of course have the Bears coming to town. So, it's sort of the last on the agenda.
That's adorable, isn't it? The Bears are coming to town.
Such dumb names for themselves, don't they?
Silly people. So I think that it's going to come to a head at the end of the week, isn't it? It's going to be Derby Day in Glasgow, as Crocker loves to say.
The Glarby.
Aye.
The Glarby.
Hate it, but I think it's going to be one of those ones where you're going into it confident, and rightly so, but we've not got the number one striker in Scotland. Dessers is banging them in. We've yet to have a striker score for us this season. So, look, it's at Celtic Park. I'm looking forward to it, but there's still, while I'm looking at Rangers going, I can see weaknesses in there. They've just off the back of a 6-0, but that makes me feel a bit better because I don't want to go in there underestimating them. So, looking forward to it. I just feel that Matt O'Reilly hole in that central midfield is massive, and I'm not having any of this, look, if players come in, there's no way they can play in the derby. Yes, they can.
Yeah, players have made their debut in the derby.
It's absolutely fine. If you're a good player, you will be fine. So hopefully we get a wee couple of debutants in the derby. That'd be lovely, and just looking forward to it now. And do you know what would be nice? If it wasn't raining all day when it's on as well.
Yeah.
It's funny. I suppose it depends what we get in now at this point in time. We're just there are some
you say the transfers are going to make you feel more or less confident in the outcome of the game?
No. But in terms of the selection, I just wonder what would have to happen for the likes of Greg Taylor and Liam Scales and James Forrest not to play this game. It would have to be something quite extraordinary.
Bernardo's probably
really.
the one that's on the sugar
Yeah,
peg, isn't he?
probably Bernard. Yeah, maybe. I just wonder, like those guys, where you could improve upon them. Clearly, I think those would probably, broadly speaking, if you were to poll the fans, those were probably the positions that you'd like to upgrade upon in this window. But those guys are so embedded and have virtually played. Well, they've all played every single minute until Greg Taylor got that preposterous booking yesterday and had to be subbed off. Right, but those guys are so established in the team. I just wonder what would have to happen between now and Friday for that to be a consideration about pitching them straight in, because I don't really know if I can see something like that
I
happening.
certainly can't.
Yeah,
But imagine spending 8 million on a winger coming in. You're like, come, Champions League games, big derby games. Aye, there's one on Sunday. Can I play in that? Wee James, he's got
Go
to
and
play
get
his
James
five.
Forrest.
Well,
He's 500th game to
Of
play. No
course,
chance. you're
Well,
starting.
see, to be honest, winger position is an area where I could see, because I think Kuhn picked up a knock. James Forrest is obviously James Forrest, but we don't go down that road anymore because we respect him and we appreciate his contribution from last year. But
I think he's almost certain to start James Forrest at this
you
point.
think so?
Yeah.
I'm actually the opposite. I think if we go out and we get a decent winger, and if we spend big on a winger, the intention is that guy's going to become, one of the first picks in that side. I can see he's throwing someone in there.
I suppose that's what I
Because
mean when I say it depends really what
Yeah,
happens.
I'm with
doesn't it?
Stephen. I think if we signed 4 players, even of high quality, I don't think we'd start any of them.
Yeah.
I would, but I don't think we would. I think it'll be Kuhn and Maeda with Kyogo up top and then Bernardo playing midfield. I don't think you really want to throw in a new centre half into a derby like that. I would, because I know who's starting ahead of him. Greg Taylor, I
It
think.
is, there's this week's. Everyone
I
cross
didn't
that
even
off their
mention his
bingo
name.
card.
I know. Every week he gets it in, doesn't he?
Take a shot. Melly's had his dig at the unnamed centre half.
Just all you have to do is buy a centre half and I'll stop doing it. But I think there's certain positions where you could maybe get away with it. But I think Kuhn's deserves his place with that slight injury, kept him out of the weekend, but he came on. Maeda has to start. So you're weighing it up. I think it'll be the sort of players we've already got. But it would be nice to have options on the bench because, again, we only used 4 subs at the weekend. Ralston comes on at left back and Odin Holm comes on, and you're like, this isn't really the way it should be. So a couple of quality signings would lift the mood inside the ground. It's going to be piping anyway. No nets needed, unfortunately. So I'm looking forward to it, man.
I think, Stephen, judging having my little foray into the follow forum and speaking to Rangers supporting mates, they're not confident at all now. I don't ever know if they're like some sort of some massive psyop where they all get together and just pretend that they're unconfident and hope that bleeds into the Celtic changing room. But they certainly don't seem confident. They've had an odd approach to the beginning of the season. I've touched on this before. They scrapped their whole team on account of fan pressure. There's players like Todd Cantwell who's completely fallen out of the picture.
Yeah.
Ben Davies has been sent packing. They seem to be in a real transition in the middle of an inexplicable rebuild off the back of, by Rangers standards, actually doing not bad last season compared to how they've done typically. They're not performing particularly well this season, and I think that early sort of beating, it can be quite a psychological blow.
Yeah, and particularly Celtic are already got a very slight advantage in the league. They could basically, start to disappear really if Rangers really are as low as we all hope and are experiencing currently. Now, I said a few weeks ago that it's very rare that not an entire fan base, but the vibes coming out of a fan base are that something doesn't feel right here, because we've had it in the past before. Do you remember during the COVID season that we no longer speak of, but that's a mention of it there, right? During that, it wasn't all that long into the season, and Celtic was even winning games at the start where we all started to think, this doesn't feel right, there's something quite wrong here. But Rangers have been the complete opposite of that. They've been a complete disaster. They've don't have a stadium. They're already out of the Champions League. They lost at Hamden to Kiev, and it's been very, very poor. Manager looked to be working his ticket a few weeks ago and then signed a new contract out of the blue, and they've just not had a very good start to the season. So the vibes is off with them. However, there's nothing quite like a 6-0 victory to make me say, okay, that's something. Dessers is scoring goals. Matondo is scoring goals, or at least scored at least one at the weekend there. I can't remember who else. Danilo's back as well. He got one. So they're probably more confident now off the back of that game than they were previously. But that said, I think this will be clipped. This season has felt like it has felt like a procession to Celtic getting a proper opportunity to go and do them in this game, because it's Celtic's opportunity there, because they're not oblivious. They know what's going on across the river here, and they know that they're not in a great place. They know that they've struggled.
Sharp, aren't we?
Yeah. Celtic have been playing very, very well. We have had plenty of grumbles on this podcast about the recruitment, the running of the club and all that. But that said, taking all that aside, they're playing very, very well. Just now, they've been scoring goals. They've been conceding very few chances. Can't remember really Kasper Schmeichel making any saves so far this season.
He's had a quieter summer than the Celtic recruitment team.
yeah.
And that's saying something.
Yeah. So he's only conceded that goal. That was an amazing header in the cup game. So no goals conceded.
Looking
in the
husky,
league.
isn't he?
Yes, it looked like he's enjoyed his holiday. Yeah, but it seems to work for him. I'll give him that. But there's obvious reasons to be confident about this game. You never go into them fully just complacent and saying, right, we're going to absolutely smash them. Even under Brendan Rodgers the first time around, when we would routinely absolutely batter them, I would always go in thinking, right, very confident, but there's always the chance. They'll be very, very motivated, Rangers, clearly, to try and turn it around and try and buy the goodwill of the fans back this season, because they've put them through quite a lot so far already. They're not even in their own stadium and they're out of the Champions League, right? So they'll be very motivated to do something about it. There's all this ticket allocation fiasco.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, that's always sort of bubbling away in the background. So it'll be an intense game, of course, but I can't shake the feeling that it's a real opportunity for Celtic to go and just stamp all over them, really. Just stamp out their guts all over the Celtic Park pitch. So I'm looking forward to it. And it's an opportunity for Celtic and the fans to have some of the bragging rights for a time of the season. It's an opportunity for Brendan Rodgers. I bet a daddy's home for Brendan Rodgers here, I think, as well.
I mean, Melly, we could be on a hell of a week here. Some fantastic quality signings in. A good, healthy Champions League draw that we think we could do something here. Then at the end of it, you beat Rangers back home for tea, and 20 Minute Tim's flagship next Monday is going to be absolutely singing and dancing. You'd sort of touched on it. So you think the team's going to pick itself. Who do you think is most at risk at the Celtic side of a new signing coming in and taking their spot? Don't you dare say Greg Taylor.
No, genuinely, I don't think MD. I think in the game at the weekend and all the games, Celtic have certain weaknesses, but I don't think MD's been glaring that they deserve to lose their place. No. I think even at the weekend, Liam Scales came up against the physicality and done very well. I thought Celtic's fullbacks were great. Bernardo did okay in midfield. Hatate his best game. And then you're looking out wide. Maeda's come in and set up a couple of goals at the weekend. Forrest on the other side ticks along and does well. So I think the only one is maybe Forrest. Does Forrest drop out and Kuhn comes in, or does it stay with the same one at the weekend and then Ida and Kyogo? I think Kyogo starts. So I don't think there's MD glaring that a new signing would come in, but I just look at this game and think this team's playing well. Maybe it's best not to interrupt that, but what would be good, what would get 60,000 people on board is Celtic to go out and play well, but then have 2 or 3 quality signings on the bench that could come on and make a difference. Because the only problem with Celtic this season, we touched on it last week, is sometimes it gets to that 60-minute mark and there's a bit of a dip, or when we make the substitutes, there's a bit of a dip in form because we just don't have the quality there. So I think if we could bring in some players that could sort of get that going, and then once we get into the break and going into that, we're going to have 2 games a week for the foreseeable, so we're going to need everybody in there. This game's a real good one to just sort of, if Celtic are winning, then we could bring on players to make their debut, and you could get, because we're looking at it now, Matt O'Reilly's gone, Jota's gone last year. It's time for new heroes to come in, and these games are the time when your new heroes come in, Champions League games. So
I mean, we saw it last season with Bernardo, we saw it with Ida as well. You know, there's a lot of guys that we've got that's make me feel a bit more confident, Stephen, is Melly's spoken in the past about once a player achieves something like scoring in the Champions League, it seems normal to them. They can see themselves doing that. And I'm kind of got more confident in this team because I have seen Adam Ida score against Rangers. I've seen Bernardo boss it against Rangers. I've seen Kyogo do it multiple times against Rangers. I've seen AJ thrive in these games. I've seen Carter. Everyone that we've got, we're moaning here, well, this team's exactly the same as last year. We've not brought anybody new in. The flip side of that is absolutely everything we have got, I feel more confident because I've seen all those guys do it against
Yeah.
Rangers last year.
Exactly. And Bernardo not only has scored against Rangers, he has also had that moment at Hampden, as
Yeah.
you said, he bossed it, but he, sensing that Celtic needed something from this game, just took control of it. He took the ball, rode a dodgy challenge. It would have been the easiest thing in the world to either go down after that challenge where he was fouled in the middle of the pitch, or just put it out wide and hope to get a few players in the box. But he didn't. He just drove straight to the goal and hit it straight at Butland, who spilled it.
Obviously,
of course, and it led to the goal. So all these guys know what it takes in these games. And going back to the potential of new signings coming in, I think you're right, Mel. I think it's guys like that are at risk, isn't it? It's Palma and Stephen Welsh and guys like that who have been on the bench in recent weeks. It's guys like that who are going to probably lose their places, and it might not immediately improve the so-called starting 11, but it makes the squad better, and that's really what it's all about. So I'll be very surprised. As I say, I'd be very surprised if we go out and sign 4 or 5 bits of genuine quality and 4 start against Rangers. I think we'll probably see 1 maximum, but it's going to feel an awful lot better if you look at the bench and look at these guys raring to go. These guys are one off that bench to prove themselves in the biggest game they've got immediately and to establish themselves as Celtic players.
Just as a sidebar, do you think it's weird that like McCarthy left and Kobayashi left and Celtic haven't mentioned it?
Have they not mentioned Kobayashi?
No, they've never mentioned that. I think it's a wee bit disrespectful. I mean, it's not necessarily their fault. If you're watching this, you'll think these guys don't talk about the actual games and the to and the fro of the games and the chances and how Celtic played. But we do. Patreon.com/20minute-Tims. We do match reactions to every single Celtic game there. And right now it's only £2.50 a month, so you can check that out and get some info there. But we will be at the Celtic game. We'll have our reaction to that. We'll have a special live build-up on Saturday morning ahead of the game where we'll be reacting to the Rangers game, the Champions League and the closing of the transfer window. Any new players, we'll have them scouted. Those will be podcasts. You can't move for content in the next couple of weeks at patreon.com/20minute-Tims. Thank you so much for watching us. Thank you for listening. I will see you next week at the other side of the transfer window, the Champions League and the Rangers game. Thank you.